We just rebuilt and restored this 75-year-old carburetor. And over the next few minutes, I want to show you how. This is a Carter WO, and these were typically fitted to the L134 engines on the Willys Jeeps. If you had an F134, you most likely had the YF carb, unless it was military, and then you could have the YS, which has a 90-degree angle at the top of it. This is the carburetor identification tag, and these get lost a lot during rebuilds. And you really want to try and keep this and put it back on when you've finished. Leave it there for the next guy, it's a little bit of history. The teardown is nice and simple. All you have to do really is carefully remove everything and clean it. All carburetors have tiny passages in them that get blocked very easily, especially with modern ethanol fuels. Dust, dirt and grime can cause havoc inside these, and 90% of the problems that you're going to have, if it's not wear, is going to be related to the dirt. So making sure this is really clean is a huge part in getting a smooth running carburetor. You can see the dirt and grime in here. This isn't that bad. Some carbs, you wouldn't believe how rusty and full of gunk they are and varnished fuel. This is in pretty good condition and it is an excellent candidate for restoration. This part tends to stick a bit with the gasket, and if you can't get it off, you can use a plastic scraper. Put it between the gap there and give it a little sharp smack with a mallet. Do not use anything metal. You will crack it. These are just all blanking plugs and they can be safely removed. They typically have new ones in your carburetor repair kit, and if your kit doesn't have these in it, it's usually a sign that it's not a great quality kit. It is worth spending the extra $5 or $10 for a really good rebuild kit. Quality does matter, and the really cheap nasty ones, A, don't come with a lot of the parts, they don't fit, and sometimes they just don't even work. This particular kit I got from Dan Sharon at Classic Military Vehicles. They are not a sponsor. I just particularly like their kits for these Carter WO kits. They tend to specialize in the earlier military stuff, but these are really well put together kits with all the screws and everything that you need. You don't actually need to remove this center screw to remove this bar. I take it out because I want to be able to clean it, and now's as good a time as any. But that bar could actually be removed once you remove the flap on the inside without any of this support structure coming off. This fancy looking socket is actually designed for square fasteners, and you can just take that off with a wrench. I really like those sockets because it stops you rounding anything off. But you can get those plugs just about anywhere, it's not a huge deal. A really common fault with these floats is that they leak. They get a little pinhole in them, either through corrosion or some of the solder fails. And when you tap them, you can hear if it's dead. The other thing you can do is put it in a liquid and see if bubbles come out of it. When we run these through the ultrasonic, I also shake them when they come out to make sure I can't hear any liquid splooshing about inside it. You might be wondering why I'm sort of keeping the gaskets to one side. I've formed the habit of keeping all the old gaskets until the entire carburetor is rebuilt. I do that because they can have witness marks on them. Now, it doesn't mean that the last guy that was in there did it right, But if you're unsure of which way around something goes, a good indicator is looking at the old gasket and seeing the marks and seeing how it lines up. So they don't immediately go in the bin with me, because I might need that clue. Jets are easy to take out, but there's something you need to bear in mind. Make sure that you're using a big enough screwdriver or a proper jet removal tool. If you use something that's too small, it will round those jets off. They're only brass and they're soft, and you can get in a situation where you can't take them out. So make sure that it actually fits properly in there with the right size before you start trying to get it out. That one there didn't want to come out yet, so I'm going to put it in the sonic bath to stew for a little while. And once it's been through that process, it'll come out really easily because it's just a little bit corroded. Reaching around in hot water from the ultrasonic bath to find all your little parts can get old really quick. So I just put all the bits in a sandwich baggie, let the water go in there, and leave them open on one side. They don't tend to fall out, and everything will get clean, and you keep them all together. There's lots of different chemicals you can put in ultrasonic baths. I've tried most of them. I've tried all of the commercially available ones that I know of, and my favourite thing is the Cascade dishwasher tablets. Again, not a sponsor, but boy do they work well for cleaning things up in ultrasonic baths. If you don't have an ultrasonic bath, you can use a lot of carb cleaner and soak them and keep blowing out all the holes, but these are really effective at cleaning from the inside out. So if you can, see if you've got a friend who does their own ammo reloading, because they nearly always have one. See if you can borrow one. And they do sell them pretty cheap on any of the, discount websites. It's a good tool to have. And there's nothing that really cleans a carburetor quite like them. I'm just turning everything upside down and making sure that I've got all the liquid out of there. I want to put this in the solvent bath, and the solvent bath isn't really at this point to do any cleaning. It's more to get rid of the water with the dishwasher tablet in it, that chemical, off all these parts. The solvent will make sure that nothing oxidizes. If we just took it straight out of there with the chemical from the dishwasher tablet, that whole carb body would just go white and furry over a few hours, and that's no good to anyone. So running it through this solvent, and you can use a bit of WD-40, or it doesn't matter, just any kind of light oil. There is, by the way, a weird myth that you can't use WD-40 anywhere near a carburetor, because people say it reacts strangely with gasoline and gels. This is garbage. Many people have done videos disproving this. You will also get people that have worked out that WD stands for water displacement, and they proudly tell you that it's not an oil, it's a water displacement. Well, that's an action, not a thing. It is an oil, and as far as I'm aware, WD-40 is actually a type of fish oil. It works fantastically for certain applications. I use it to clean all my tools, and a lot of machinists, myself included, will use it as a lubricant when machining aluminum because it's extremely good for that. So yeah, don't worry about using it on your carburetor to stop it oxidizing. It'll be perfectly fine for that. Again, not a sponsor. I'm just kind of bored of people talking rubbish about it. As important as it is to clean the outside of this, you want to make sure that you're putting whatever fluid you're cleaning with through every single one of these tiny holes. You will notice that I still have some of the blanking plugs and jets in, and that's because some of them are a lot easier to take out once they've been through the ultrasonic bath. And this is me taking the strainer out and this blanking plug. But it's fine just to take these out afterwards and then flush all that through, and make sure you flush out every single internal passage inside this carb. That particular bit doesn't need to be cleaned particularly well because the replacement comes in the kit. I was just looking to see if there's any debris in it. So that's them all flushed out with solvent. And at this point you could rebuild this carb and it'll work perfectly fine. We're going to laser clean the carb body because we want it to be more of a restoration, and we want it to be a little bit cleaner and shinier for the customer. Now obviously not everybody's got a laser cleaner. They are eye-wateringly expensive. So you can have a very similar result, just takes a little bit longer with a polishing wheel and a bit of time, and you can get there. But I really like how these come up with a laser cleaner, and I love the look of the finished product when it's all finished and shiny. When you're installing the jets, you can round these off as easy as you can when you're taking them out, so make sure you're using the right size screwdriver and you're not cross-threading everything. When this flap goes in, you'll see there's a little C on it, and that C has to be pointed down in that orientation towards that blanking port. You are going to hate putting these screws in. It makes it look easy in the video, that's just editing. It took ages. They fall out, you can't get them lined up, but there isn't enough room to put your fingers in. If you can get a set of tweezers in there, then you can't get the screwdriver on it. It's just a pain, it's fiddly, it will take you a few minutes. Just take a deep breath and don't get frustrated. The idle air mixture screw can be damaged if you over tighten it, so be really careful as you're putting this in. Tighten it down, but gently until it just touches. Over tightening will damage the end. Once you've got it so it seats gently, you can back that off 1.5 turns, and that's going to get you somewhere near where it needs to be to get the vehicle to start. That's kind of the factory setting. Typically, I'm not a big fan of PTFE being anywhere near a carburetor, but this blanking plug can leak, and you definitely do not want to use the tape. This thread sealant, a little bit goes a long way, so put a tiny bit on the starting threads, smear it round, and then put it in there. It is really good at clogging things up, but it is nowhere near as bad for your carb as the tape, which shouldn't be let anywhere near it. All the jets go in pretty easily, you shouldn't have any significant problems, but it's worth noting that some of them have a jet inside a jet in the same hole. So take note when you're taking them out what goes where. And make sure that you look down every hole when you take them out to make sure that there isn't another jet further down in that hole that's slightly smaller. And then put them back in the same order that they came out. It's really easy to miss them down there because they're not going to be shiny and brass looking. They're going to be old and oxidized. So have a proper look in every one of those holes because some of them take multiple ones. Don't try and put this filter screen in top down. Do it from the bottom like I'm showing here because it will fall out every single time and drive you crazy. All these blanking plugs can just go on without any problems. You'll notice that that has a bright green sleeve on it, and that's so it doesn't get damaged. That can come off before you push it into the rest of the carb. You see here how the R-clip is sticking to those pliers? That's because it's a very expensive specialist. No, not at all. I don't know why it stuck to there, but I was just going with it because it made life easier. I was just lucky in that particular case. At each point where you assemble something that moves, just check it and make sure it doesn't bind anywhere through its full range of movement. It's super easy to forget this plunger, so look out for it, make sure it's in there. Sometimes you'll get a kit with a solid one in there, that's not great for off-road use. Gasket does have to go on before you float, and you'll need to measure your float distance from that machine surface. For these, the factory setting is 3/8, and that's from the furthest point of the float to the machined face of the lid. And it should just sit there on the spring and be 3/8 high. I've actually already adjusted this off camera. And that little bounce there is a good sign. It's moving on that little spring. Do not push down too far on those, and when you adjust them, do not bend the float, bend the little tab that goes between it. You will hate these gaskets. They do not go on very easily, and you have to fight them a little bit to get them to fit in. It just seems to be a thing with every single one of these kits that first gasket is a little bit of a fight. You will find it will cut its own path when you tighten it down, but check that there is no air leak afterwards. I personally use thread locker on all carb screws. There's a school of thought that says that that makes it really hard for them to come undone. This is a garbage school of thought. If you think that you're stripping screw heads off because of thread locker, you don't understand how thread locker works. It's a perfectly safe thing to put on a carb. They do put split washers on here, which are the absolute devil. I keep them on there because of originality, but they are more likely to loosen the screw than they are anything else. So having the thread locker on there is good insurance. Tighten them down evenly, don't over tighten them, and use the right size screwdriver. If you're using the right size screwdriver, you're never going to strip any of these screws out. It's worth bearing in mind though, thread locker is activated through ferrous metals, so when you're using a brass screw into an aluminum carb, it's never going to activate. So we spray a little bit of activator in each one of the holes first. And here you can see I haven't put the tab on, so I'm taking that screw back out again so I can make sure that the ID tag is back on the carb. It's always worth taking that extra bit of effort to put that back in the right place. And here is the finished carburetor. Thank you very much for watching.